Well, it's a sunny, chilly 9 degrees here in the Silver Coast region of Portugal. And over the holidays, I had some fun discussions with friends. Sometimes during the holiday season, people will actually have a voice conversation with you. Kind of like a holiday gift. Maybe even a face-to-face conversation or two, which was a real blessing. Very, very happy and fortunate about that, and thankful to see a couple of friends, a few friends over the holidays in person. High tech, high touch. Even though travel was extremely inconvenient and upsetting, no fun, because of the C-19 situation. And during a lot of these conversations and some online conversations, I got to thinking a lot about black boxes. You know, you have the box that airplanes carry, data box, so that crash investigators can figure out from the data what might have happened to bring down a jet airliner and kill a bunch of people. You'd have to be an expert to know how to interpret the data. However, the data in the black box doesn't tell its own story necessarily to those who cannot interpret it. So there is a great deal of expertise required by those crash investigators who are there to discern what happened to the airplane by, analyzing the data. So it's not like any one of us. I could just get the black box and download the data and figure it all out. I don't know about aeronautics. I don't know about the systems in the plane. I don't know about all the safety elements and the various kinds of human error that can impact a crash, and so on and so on. So I wouldn't get it. And it's occurred to me for a long, long time, which is why I keep referring to black boxes, that so much of the world systems, let's just say, whether it's a computer chip or a political system, economic system, how your electric car works, and so on and so forth, they're all black boxes to the vast majority of us. We don't know how the things work. We just use them. Sometimes they're really useful tools that help, that give us agency and give us the power to do things that we really want to do, to create, to have an impact that might be positive to our friends, family, our tribe, communities, cultures, whatever. But most of the time we don't know how these things work, so we're just users. I just read a book recently, The Hacking of the American Mind, and now I'm reading one about global transitions, very broad in scope, very interesting. The second one's a lot more data-driven than the first one, but still there's science behind both of them. And they inform, they educate. I learned a lot from it, and I had fun with it. Nothing earth-shattering, nothing that I wasn't exposed to before, but still very interesting. So, anyway, we're sitting within and among a whole bunch of black boxes. We don't know how they work. We don't know how they work on us. So a lot of us really aren't concerned about what the smartphone's really there to do, and all the apps and everything, the algorithms. We can't dissect our culture. We don't know how many of the systems we take for granted work. And so we're just kind of flailing along, our emotions being played like a fiddle at a fair, determining everything that we do, everything that we're outraged about, basically our state of being, whether stressful or pleasurable. But we all think we know what we're doing. I mean, our capacity for self-delusion, or for delusion, what can I say? Our capacity for delusion is immense. And our capacity for self-deception is immense. Lots of great quotes about that. And then on top of that, I always refer to the players, and these are people who have more resources than all of us and more capacity to play the game. And the great game basically is just extracting resources to obtain wealth. And you could be an individual, a corporation, a conglomerate, a nation state, but you want to control the resources, extract those resources no matter what, in order to, profit from it. And this is what we do. It's the great game. And it has brought us many innovations, taken us to the moon, and so on, given us Netflix, great video streaming. Thank you for watching. And we have all these people nowadays who read some blogs and some newspaper articles like I do, and have an opinion about how these grand things work, or the grand strategies or conspiracies, or what China's going to do and why we should be worried about it, and the supply chain and all of this stuff. Canadian prepper, chatting about, oh my God, this is why we really should be worried. And that's just fine. Yeah, if you think about it, some of those things can be worrisome, but we still don't know how the system works. We still are surrounded by black boxes and living inside a black box. And for most of us, our very self is a black box. So without a deeper understanding, how do any of us have the capacity or the ability or the agency to make a difference? So we just continue to do what we do, which is enjoy our addictions and get on with business so we can buy all the stuff that we need to buy to think that we're happy, when really a lot of times the pleasure-seeking activity of getting all those things is killing us and making us miserable. So what do I mean? It's always been frustrating to me that more of us don't want to read the readers. So if you're in the UK You might have a title at a university, a reader in history, a reader in biology, or something like that. And this is because experts read a lot. And they read other readers and other researchers and scientists and opinion makers, and they read about historical figures, and, constantly reading science papers. They read a lot, and they know how to interpret the information that they're reading. So they're not just reading for the sake of reading. They're trying to solve puzzles or come up with solutions or explanations for how things work in the world. And I suppose throughout history there have always been a small percentage of people in the world that appreciated that, the work and effort required to be a reader in a domain, and the ability for people to come up with new ideas and models and ways of doing things and technologies and so on when they're an expert in their domain. But now we don't care to do that work or even appreciate that work. What we do like to do is just go to an opinion, an editorial that matches our own biases, and parrot those things, and then think we have an opinion. So when I hear most readers talk on YouTube or wherever, they're always very humble. They always listen to the other person finish their thought. They very rarely interrupt their interlocutors. And they're thoughtful, and they've thought through their opinions and ideas and thoughts, and they're usually very articulate and not bad at communicating them. So that's nice. But then we have a lot of noise on the internet where people just get on and just ramble on like I am. Sorry for that. I hope you get my main point. And that's characterized by people who really think they know what they're talking about, when really they have a very shallow, superficial idea of what they're talking about. And I guess I just wish that people would become readers. So if you're interested in a public figure or a time in history or a technology or science, you would read 4 or 5 books in the subject at the very, very least, and kind of absorb that. You would take the time at the very least to go to Peter Attia's website and read his series on how to read a science paper. I mean, that's the bare minimum if you want to read science papers, because if you really want to read and interpret and understand science papers, then you have to study statistics. And if it's a science paper on chemistry, you'd have to know a little bit about chemistry, so you'd have to read up on that. And Schmachtenberger articulates this really, really well in his sense-making talks or articles. The Consilience Project is a thing that wants to help us do that by harnessing people who can vet information in an open way and help us navigate through all the noise. I don't know why we don't really care about that, but I think A lot of it just has to do with simple ego and emotions and addictions that we're not really in control of, even though we think we are. And so, yeah, we're deluded. Cognitive dissonance and biases and whatnot. Yeah. But my hope is that a lot more of us become readers, And believe me, if you don't have time to listen to an audiobook or read a science paper or read 3 or 4 books on Winston Churchill, if you're interested in that guy and that period of history, if you're not going to do that, then I wouldn't say shut the fuck up. No, come on, you can say whatever you want. YouTube's there for everybody who can afford to make a YouTube video. But anyhow, say what you want to say. I would hope that you'd be more humble about it and recognize that the world is pretty much of a black box to you. I mean, you really don't know that much about everything. And so you would couch your opinions in some, humility. And just make it known to your listeners. You don't know shit. But this is kind of the way it rubs you, It rubs me the wrong way. I don't feel good about this. This seems outrageous to me, but I really don't know the details. But of course, it's not that satisfying. We want to have answers. We want to have formulas to success and beauty and power. And we don't really want to deal with the complexities and nuances of understanding things deeply. Too much work. Who's got the time? Well, admit it. You don't have the time. You don't know shit. And relax, because it's okay. Not knowing shit means that you've got a lot of shit you could learn if you wanted to. And you can keep it to a narrow domain. And then you can say, look, I don't know much about geopolitics, but I know how to make a good knife. Or I know a lot about photography, or I know a lot about cognitive, psychology or whatever. And you say, yeah, look, I can confidently say I'm a reader in that space, national defense or whatever it is. And so here's where I get my opinions. This is the bibliography, these are the reference links, and so on. And then people can look at that and say, okay, that's something to delve into, and I might just trust this person. And in that way, if we're humble and honest with ourselves and recognize that most things are a black box to us, we can start to build trust. People can say, well, he doesn't know shit, but I think I can trust him. And that's basically it. But I want to get more deeply into this because, everybody is so excited about Web3 and Metaverse and all these distractions. I think they're distractions because I don't see the big benefit that's going to help us avert the terrible consequences of global warming, that's going to stop us from having an accidental nuclear war, or going to help us with biodiversity, sustainability, public health, basically. And so these issues don't deal with the broad enough context and structural and systemic problems that we really have to digest and try to sort out. And to do that, we have to understand a little bit more how the game is played. So it's not to just bitch about the game, but it's to recognize and understand that the great game is played by a very few people, and they made up the rules, and they're the referees of the game. They determine how it's played, where it's played, on whose terms, and we don't. So the first thing to do is just understand the game. You don't have to judge it as good or bad or anything, or be overtly ideological in a narrow sense. I don't like labels, communist, Democrat, Republican, socialist, whatever, in the political sense or in any other sense, unless it's something that is definable very clearly. I label that a car because it's a car. And I don't like complex identity games, so I don't want to layer too many things on top of, this is me, Bouliam T. Okay, whatever. So, yeah, if we can do that, I think we understand the game, how it's played, who's playing it, and recognize that that's not really us. Of course, we all play games, but, you may be a great baller, man, but you don't know shit about how an iPhone works, or medicine, virology, endocrinology, whatever. So we say, okay, I learned a little bit about how the system works, and I get that, I'm going to have some clear understanding of what information I can trust and what seems more dodgy. The bullshit detector kit and all this stuff people have been talking about for ages. Go back to the 19th century, there's so much reading on things that sound very, very much like critical thinking advice, But it's not valued. What's valued for us is getting drunk, getting stoned, deadening the pain, getting laid, making money, buying shit, social signaling, and on and on and on and on and on. And most of that is just layer upon layer of addictions that make us miserable and unhappy. And, some of us can handle a few addictions fairly well. And if we can, maybe they're not addictions if they're not screwing us up. But we got to figure out how this game is played and who's playing it. It's not a matter of conspiracies. It's like, we understand the objective here, what this corporation or this individual wants to achieve, or this organization. If you want to talk about Christian nationalists in the United States of America or in a particular jurisdiction, and they tell you exactly what they want and what they want to achieve, and you say, okay, I get it. I understand what they're playing the game for. And then maybe you can decide whether you're for or against them. Most of the time it's fairly obvious. If you do learn to trust some experts in the domain of virology, you might be able to understand the consensus of opinion surrounding a scientific issue with virology and say, okay, I think I'm going to go with those guys on it, and not with the dude on the internet who has an opinion based on a bunch of bloggers he reads or a bunch of ideologically motivated outlets. It's important we do this now because, this is the call to action. No, it's important that we do this now because, these are complex issues we're facing, and problems and risks. And what happens, from what I understand from reading experts in terms of social phase shifts and paradigm shifts and whatnot, This book I'm reading now, Grand Transitions, is really interesting. But you can't perceive any changes forever and ever. It's just things just seem to go on and on and on like they have. Look at these beautiful cranes or whatever they are. Is that a crane? Or they're gorgeous, black and white with red beaks. Beautiful, and they're big. I don't have zoom on this camera, so too bad. Beautiful, beautiful birds. There are lots of good birds around here, which is a good sign, I guess. They have all these little parks dotted around all the farms that act as a refuge for wildlife. Obviously not that much wildlife because we live in the 21st century, but you know. Yeah, so these risks are extreme, and we have to sort it out, and all the noise and opinionated bullshit, anger, otherism, cancel culture, all that crap's not going to help us at all. And I think the more people read, and read a good book by a trusted author or expert who's read a lot of books about what he's talking about, he or she, or it, or them, or they. But yeah, I think if you do that, make it a discipline. I mean, make it a must. You know, it's not one of these things that you want to do or think you should do, but something that you know you have to do, and get serious about it. Because it's important. If we don't, we're in trouble. And you may think you're in control because right now you have enough money and resources or something, and you know you're damn smart, you got an education, and you're tough, and you roll on the mat with the jiu-jitsu boys, and you're good with firearms, whatever the hell you're proud of. Your empathy, your health, and your well-being, whatever it is, you know, wherever you pull your pride. I love that C.S. Lewis piece about the sin of pride. I wish people would understand that. And no, it's not because I'm religious or I call myself a Christian or something. No. There's a lot of wisdom in that. There is something to be learned there. And players are going to grab power and use mechanisms and tools to obtain and maintain their power. And sometimes that is religion and spirituality. And so, yeah, they're going to use those levers to control the masses because it's good for them to do that, you know? Maintain control, maintain power. This is normal. I mean, thinking that it's any different from any other time in history is wrong, but the big difference is, man, this is the amount of black boxes we're surrounded by now and that we use on a daily basis and take for granted is incredible. And the technology and science is changing fast, and we have no clue what's going on. So who do you think's going to decide how to use it? So yeah, you should be concerned about labels like domestic terrorism, because what's that mean, and who's going to decide what it means? Who's going to decide that you're a domestic terrorist? Yeah, there is a definition for it. We can come up with a very narrow sociological, cultural, and legal definition for what constitutes a domestic terrorist, and then we can do what we have to do to mitigate the risk from domestic terrorism. But you want to know about that process and how we're defining that, because otherwise it's very easy for government to take advantage of it, and it happens in smaller countries around the world. And once we're doing micropayments on cryptocurrencies for everything under the sun, so every 10 seconds you're taxed. You got to pay another micropayment. Who's in control then? Do we get to the point where we just have to say, I bow out? I try to find a cave somewhere? Become a paleo sovereign man? It's going to be tough. So it's, the more we understand about the black boxes and who controls them, Google, Facebook, whatever, what are the politics surrounding Bitcoin and Web3 and so on? Is it all just there to make our life more convenient? Do you really think so? All of it can be very useful and can improve the quality of our lives. But it could also be very dangerous, so it behooves us to read in these subjects. And you can go on and say that you've done your research and you read, but what are you reading? Look at the authors of the articles in the magazines or newspapers that you look at, and try to understand who these people are, where they're coming from, their politics, their agendas. Most of us are just careerists, we just want to make the money, so obviously we don't want to piss off a dollar bill, because that'll fuck up our car payment. But beyond that, people have agendas. Everybody does, and then you wonder where they got theirs. Where did this guy get his thing? From his daddy's belt, or from his liberal professor's mouth? Did he catch the gripe of neo-Marxism or something? Did he just happen to hang out with the wrong people, like that Canadian right-wing guy said from the base? Well, look, I just fell in with the wrong people. What can I say? Come on. Think it through, but more importantly, do your own reading. Read some serious books and read some serious articles about these things. And level up your minor sliver of expertise. That's a nice little homestead. Good configuration. Good configuration of homestead with front garden. Very nice. Very, very nice. I am riding my bicycle around Caldas de Rainha. So if the NSA or the CIA or are tracking me, okay, I'll publish all the data on Google Maps later. You can find me anytime you want. Stop recording. All right, coming up here is a really nice hill. Very exciting. I can skirt across the top and go down and up, or I can go down here A long, gentle slope. And it starts now.
Son, yo le traigo. Eso es, yo le traigo mi son. Son, yo le traigo. Sabroso, rico, rico. Son, yo le traigo. Ay, yo le traigo mi son. Son, yo le traigo. Vamos a fiestar, mamita. Yo le traigo mi son. Ay, yo le traigo mi son. Son sabrosos. Yo le traigo mi son. Ay, qué rico suena. Yo le traigo mi son. Ay, qué rico suena. Yo le traigo mi son. Eso es. Yo le traigo mi son. Ajá. Yo le traigo mi son. Ahora. Yo le traigo mi son. El son de Cuba. El son de Cuba traigo yo. Apúrense que el son llegó. El son de Cuba. El son de Cuba traigo yo. Porque la fiesta ya empezó. La fiesta sigue toda la noche con este ritmo tan especial. La gente baila, la gente goza con esa música original. Sabroso.